So, hello everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Taylor Ambrosio Wood, and I'm a freelance composer here in Seattle, and I'm here to talk to you about 10 business tips for game industry freelancers. So I've been a freelancer for about the last 2 years after I finished my master's in scoring for video games, film, and TV. And these are some things that I've learned over the last couple of years that I felt were omitted from my program in a lot of schools that are very important. So why is freelancing relevant? Well, most people in the game industry will be a freelancer at one point in their career, either starting out, switching between full-time game industry jobs, or maybe doing a little freelancing on the side. And as you can see in the current state of our industry with AAA companies laying off people by the hundreds, it's always good to have your freelance stuff all set up so you can protect yourself and you're ready to go. All right, let's try. There we go. Okay, so our goals of freelancing is to build your career, build your business, get paid doing what you love, get better and better projects, and remain organized and happy and have it all work out. The first tip is to think of yourself as a business. The sooner you do this, the better off you'll be. So your professionalism will attract quality clients. So you're now your own business, the owner, the manager, and your only employee, usually to start. And it's more similar to a startup company or an entrepreneur. So I know if you're like a freelance artist or level designer, we tend to think, oh, we're an artist, which is great, but you also need to like put your own business hat on. So that's the first thing. The second thing is assembling a great portfolio. Again, this is great even if you have a full-time job in the game industry, just in case. So when assembling a portfolio, you want to think about what's most representative of your work. And when deciding on what to add to your portfolio, whether it's level designs or music in my case or art, is if somebody just looked at that one piece, would you be okay with that, and would that be representative of your work? Because again, in modern times, people don't have time to look through your whole portfolio, so they might click on one thing, see one image. So just be very careful about each thing that you post and add to your portfolio. Don't make yourself look like a student. Not that it's bad to be a student, and even while you are a student. Like when I was getting started, I got a lot of gigs from my school projects, but I retitled them or called them something else, or say they're from like an unfinished game you were working on or something, as opposed to like student exercise number 1. So again, you want to make yourself look like a professional business. Another thing to think about when assembling your portfolio is, what kind of business do you want to be? Do you want to have a very specific style? People come to you because you write this style of music or you do this style of art? Or do you want to be more broad and like you can imitate other styles? So it's what kind of business do you want to be is an important thing to think about. Another part of this is having your online presence. If you're an artist, being on Instagram and whatever social media is relevant to your field. Having a nice professional website. I suggest WordPress because there's tons of resources for it. Looking at other websites in your profession to kind of see what they do and see what you like or don't like is great. And I suggest marketing yourself as a master instead of a jack of all trades, master of none, because although you can be hired to do a bunch of different things in your freelance career, it's good to show what you want to be asked to do. So same with your portfolio. Like if I don't like writing trailer music, which I don't really show any of it because I don't want people to ask me to do that. So think about, what do you want people to ask you to hire you to do? Again, with social media, every post you have is now a professional one, even your private friend Facebook, because anyone can screenshot anything and everybody knows everyone, as you know. So you want to make sure, not to drag clients on your private Facebook and things like that. And yeah, it's a very small circle, so just being aware that you can still post fun stuff and memes, but that you're also a business now. So step 3 is attracting quality clients. You want to not only network with potential clients like game developers who could hire you to write music or do art, but also your colleagues. Like I've gotten a lot of gigs because a friend had too many and he suggested me or needed orchestration or additional music for his. So sometimes we forget about like hanging out and kind of networking with our own colleagues. You also want to scope out potential clients. Do you think they're actually going to finish their project? How long is it going to take? And valuing going to in-person things like this event or GDC, as well as your online presence. Like if you live really far out, I used to live in Portland, and I would take the train to Seattle events to like go to events and stuff. So kind of using in-person meetups to support your online presence is really helpful. And you can be, when we start out freelancing, we have a tendency to just take any gig that comes our way, but you can be a little bit selective. So you kind of want to judge potential gigs on these 3 aspects. So money, are they going to pay you a lot, a little? What kind of project it is? Are you inspired by it? Is the client, are they nice? Are they going to be a nightmare to work with? So if they're not going to pay you, the project's not very good and they're a nightmare, probably don't take it, right? So kind of using that rubric to judge what you're going to participate in. And if you've got your portfolio and everything's great and you don't have any clients, start making your own projects. Again, create things that you want people to ask you to do. If you want to do horror sound design, start making a bunch of examples of that. So you don't need to just sit on your hands. Start creating stuff that you want people to hire you to do. Okay, so step 4 is you want to have contracts no matter how small the project is. No gentleman's agreements, no, oh, it sounds good, because game projects, as you guys know, usually take a really long time. So you might not even remember what you agreed to 2 years ago if the project's taking a long time. So there's no detail too small to include. How many revisions, the terms of payment, how you're going to be credited, are you going to keep the rights to your work and music? That's a very important thing. And you can find a contract template in your field, like if you're a visual artist. Again, that's another great reason to network with your colleagues, to be like, what did you guys use? What should I put in it? Or some people that have been freelancing longer than you can ask. So if a potential client doesn't want to sign a contract or doesn't want to negotiate, that's a bit of a red flag. If they're like, oh, don't worry about it, yeah, I'll pay you. Be careful of that, okay? So the contract not only keeps it professional, but it also helps remember what it was, so that the client feels protected, you know what all your responsibilities are, and then you have in it, okay, you're gonna pay me after 14 days after I invoice you, and etc. So don't be afraid to negotiate with contracts, take a long time sorting it out. Again, you're showing professionalism and you want to attract professional clients and keep everybody happy. So it's very important to have contracts. Okay, who likes money? Raise your hand if you want money and you like it. Okay, come on, guys. Yes, we all like money. We like food, we like eating, we like money. So, all businesses have their own accountants. So because you're your own business, you also need to be your own accountant so that you can make money. It's not glamorous, but it does need to be done. So managing your money, how much you're spending, what you're taking in, keeping track of business expenses. As a freelancer, any of you guys who've already paid freelancer taxes, you know it's kind of a nightmare and it's a lot of money because you don't have a company paying your taxes for you. So keeping track of business expenses, software you buy, a new tablet, for your art, coming to this event, those kind of things, if you keep record of them, you can deduct them on your taxes, which is fantastic. So I suggest getting an accounting software. I use QuickBooks. It's like $20 a month. And you can sync it with your bank account and tag every single expense so you can see what's a business expense, what's personal or whatever. And at the end of the year, you can just look at it all at once and, keeping track of your receipts and stuff like that. Again, not glamorous, but now you're a business. And this really will help. I didn't do this the first time, and it was not great. So I would suggest that you think about being your own accountant. The other aspect of this is, if I can press the button, I'm pressing the wrong one. There we go. Okay, so we all are familiar with this meme if you've been a freelancer. You want the payment, but there's just a couple more changes. So again, that's something to put in your contract, like how many revisions are you going to do? And I got paid so much faster and more when I started using professional invoices as opposed to just having our word of agreement or a cruddy invoice I made myself. So having a due date, a reminder date, using the accounting software for invoicing is super helpful because that makes the accounting software can now be the bad guy because the email comes from QuickBooks your invoice is due in 3 days as opposed to you having to text your client or something. Then you can be the creative and be the fun one, and then the software will do the bad guy job for you of getting your payments and reminding them and such, which eventually an agent or a manager would do, but if you don't have that, it's good to have the software. So it removes yourself from the equation. Don't be afraid to add late fees, detailed item descriptions of everything that it took you to do whatever the project is. Rush fees, again, that's something I didn't think about. If you have a pre-approved timeline and they suddenly want you to do something really quick, that's also things you can work into your contract. So again, like a business, we have a tendency as artists to be oh, I'll just, whatever you say, but it's good to have it all in writing. It just makes everybody's life easier. Here's some examples of the QuickBooks invoice. You can choose the color and everything. You can have the due date, the pay by date, the subtotal if you include tax, all the different items if you did a bunch of things for them, or so that your client can see all the work that went into it as well. Yeah, and then, yeah, it sends an email and you can create a template for it, and it's like really nice and professional, and I got paid so much faster when I started doing this. Okay, so software and gear management. This is number 6, is you want to, again, your business, so you want to have inventory of your stuff. So always be backing up your computer. If your computer dies tomorrow, what was even on it? Again, technology, as we know, always dies right when you're in the middle of something important. That's just like how it happens. So you want to be backing up your computer and have a list of like all the software. Like at me as a musician, I have tons of like sample libraries and all these programs and plugins. So I'm sure you guys do too with your various fields. So having a list of all of that. I like Backblaze, which just backs up in the background of your computer, and if you log in, you can, on their site, you can see everything that's being backed up, and then you can just download specific files. Like I had an external hard drive totally crash, and then I just downloaded some select files from there, or you can have them mail you a hard drive with everything that was on it. So it's a really quick way to get back up in business, and it can also back up external hard drives you have connected to your computer, which is cool. Carbon Copy Cloner is also great. It creates a bootable hard drive copy of your computer's hard drive. So if your hard drive dies, you can boot up your computer from this external drive, which is great if you're like, again, in the middle of a project and you don't have time to like go get a new computer really quick. Yeah, so having a backup plan in place. Yeah, I've fried a lot of hard drives, so this is really important. Again, sometimes you just spill water on something or something, you know, so it's good to have everything backed up. Oh, and renter's insurance, yeah. Depending on where you live, maybe you want to do that in case I've had a lot of friends get laptops stolen out of their cars and all that kind of stuff, or people break in and take their equipment, because as you know, we all have like fancy, expensive equipment now. Okay, so number 7 is task management. So you don't want to rely on your clients to create the schedule for you, because sometimes it might be their first game, sometimes they just might be too busy. So we all know where we like make an agreement and then the client just kind of like falls off the face of the earth or get too busy. So you can be in charge of creating that professional timeline. So scheduling meetings, this is when we're going to meet up. Checking in regularly with your client, like using task management software. Again, using software to be the bad guy so you can be the fun creative. So having like Asana is good, Wunderlist, or even just the Google Drive, a spreadsheet of like this item is due by then. If you're doing like, I know a lot of freelance artists and like composers in my case do task management through this kind of program, because again, there aren't really, sometimes in some fields there aren't really many in-house positions, so you got to be a freelancer or you're doing gigs on the side. It's nice to keep it all organized. You want to make your life easier. Okay, so number 8, you're a freelancer. You got your stuff set up, but you don't really got any gigs, but you also have rent. So what do? Finding a side gig. Most freelancers have a side gig. There's no shame in that, and they just don't talk about it. So it's totally great to have a side gig. Maybe you have like student loans or medical bills or something like that, and your freelance projects aren't enough, or somebody's delayed or something like that. So finding a side gig that will allow you enough time to also freelance and is also like kind of relaxing, or it doesn't need to necessarily be related to your field, but something that you enjoy that's not like a time suck and like exhausting. Do you know what I mean? So that's really important to do. Something that's flexible so you can also continue freelancing is also really important. So finding a side gig, like for example, I teach music private lessons because I live like around Amazon and Facebook and Microsoft's all here. So all of those programmers have disposable income and want to take music lessons, and there I go. So it's great to find a side gig. Okay, so number 9 is you want to have a workspace that's separate from your home living space, even if you work from home. So like don't work from in your bed, have a desk space set up, or you could go to a co-working space. Like one here is Seattle Indies has one that's like you can rent a desk and you go there and you're like with everybody else. So that's kind of nice if you like can't get work done by yourself. Because again, as a freelancer, you're your own business, so you might not be socializing that much or getting out that much. And you also so working near people can be really helpful. You also want to create your own schedule. So it can be very tempting again to like wake up at noon, work on some projects, watch YouTube, work until 2 a.m. It's not very healthy to do over multiple days, and like you want to have a consistent schedule, right? So like, do you work on weekends? It's kind of defining, like, I try to keep like a normal business hours 9 to 5 sort of situation. So do you work on weekends? Like, will you take client phone calls or texts on weekends? Kind of deciding that for yourself, because it can be very easy to be working constantly as a freelancer because you don't have set hours where you go to like a business. Okay, so our last tip is that who are you taking advice and critique from, and to think about that and come up with your own opinions. So one of the traps I fell into early on is I finished school young and naive, and I was like, everything everybody says is always right because I know nothing. That's not always true. So again, sometimes if everyone has their own business, their business model might not work for you. You might get some advice from like someone who's a great industry professional and you're like, oh my God, they must be right. But maybe it doesn't apply to you. Maybe you're trying to be more specific in the product you're selling, in your art, you want to do this type of style, and their suggestions don't really apply. So it's important to, like, even everything I've said today and the speakers you'll hear today is be like, what do I agree with? What do I disagree with? What is actually applicable to me? What is not? So a good rubric is like, don't take critique from someone you wouldn't seek advice from. So again, sometimes your friends even might be coming from a good place, but maybe, again, the advice is not 100% applicable to you. So always be critically thinking. You're looking out for your business as well. And really be critical of who you're taking advice from and whether or not you agree. So that's a very important thing to keep in mind when building your business. So that is the 10 tips. That's what I got. So now I can take questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Obviously, I'm doing lots of things wrong as a freelancer. Anyone got any questions? I have some. Let me just get a mic to you.
I was wondering what some of your experiences might be with freelancing taxes, because in tabletop freelancing, in my own experience, I found out that here in Seattle, you need to actually be set up as a sole proprietor, as a writer, in order to get paid for that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And so I actually already had a business set up prior to that, so I didn't need to worry about it. But I was wondering, you could tell us what some of those taxes that you might have encountered so that can be avoided in the future.
Yeah, there's a lot of things to think about with taxes. Like, I pay an accountant to do that because it's so complicated. But yeah, if you're a sole proprietor, is usually how you'd file your taxes as a freelancer. The tax laws have changed in like the last year, but basically you can add deductions that will then change your total gross amount, because you pay taxes now on the amount that your business makes. So if you lose so much money, and then like by using business expenses and make so much money, they'll take taxes off that on the top of the fee. So then there's the other options like an LLC. Is that what you said you were? Or yeah, and so an LLC is great, which forming that will help you if you think you might get into legal situations, because that will be on the line, your business, like if someone tries to sue you, as opposed to your own personal assets. If you're a sole proprietorship and somebody has a legal beef with you, your house, your car, and everything could be on the line. So like if you have a family, that might be good to do. And then an S Corp, I believe you have to give yourself a salary. So that's also a different thing. And again, it also depends if you're a growing business and you start having employees. That's another thing to think about. So yes, I'm not a lawyer or accountant, but those are things to research, is which one would fit best for you. I hope that answers it. Kind of.
In the UK, basically, it's so cheap to set up a limited company.
Sorry, what?
In the UK, it's so cheap to set up a limited company that basically everyone's advised to do so.
Oh, okay.
And the tax benefits are so much better.
Yeah.
But obviously, you've got different issues legally on that.
Yeah. It depends on your country, too, and your state. Like, Washington doesn't have income tax, but a different state might.
Any other questions? I'm going to ask one anyway, because it's more of a comment. So one of the things I found very useful was having a lead client. So I spent the first sort of 5.5 years of being, well, actually probably 7 years as being independent, as an evangelist for another company. So I was an evangelist for Unity for 5.5 years, for example. And it was great because it put me in a fantastic position where I was getting paid, but I was also getting in front of everybody. And so, but you've got to be very careful because it's a bit of a honey trap, because you get very used to having the money and you find it very difficult to spend the time actually working on the projects you really should be to actually do your skills.
Yeah.
Have you seen that kind of experience yourself, or is that usual or different?
Like, do you mean having you said a client?
Having a lead client.
Oh yeah, that can be really, like, I have a composer friend who like has a client that just pays them monthly no matter what to keep them on reserve.
Cool,
or like
yeah.
to keep them down. So that can be really tricky.
Retainer.
Again, if you're not actually doing work for them too, is kind of odd, because then you can, that's what I mean by like with the portfolio, always be creating something. So it's good to have multiple clients. And yeah, you can find the same trap with one primary client or even a full-time position, is that you get so comfortable with that. And if that's great. I mean, good for you if you've got that. But again, a lot of times something happens or they fall through, and then you might be left with nothing. So even if you have a primary client, not to get too caught up to that, still be networking, still be adding to your portfolio and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I spend about a third, if not half my time actually doing business development for myself.
Yeah.
And it's so hard to remember to do it for yourself.
Yeah. A lot of freelance time is spent on like your website and your portfolio and your taxes and all that stuff. And it's really not glamorous and kind of sucks, but it will make your life easier and you'll be able to last longer. And setting it up properly to begin with will really help you in the future. Yeah.
And on that note, thank you very much.
Thank you.